Hey friends, this is Kind Body Basics, and today we're going to be using a chair to help us move. So this can be a really great standalone workout, or you can pick and choose some of these exercises to incorporate into your workday when you're sitting in a chair to add more variety and add more movement to your day. Your body will thank you. So to begin, let's make sure that your chair does not have wheels. You want to make sure that your chair is going to stay put. Or if there are wheels, maybe you can lock them and just make sure that your chair is really sturdy. So I'm going to start by sitting at the edge of my seat. So join me there. And I'm going to make sure that my knees are over my ankles, okay? And hopefully your knees can be at the same level as your hip or a little bit lower. So depending on the size of your body and the size of your chair, if you're sitting and your knees are higher than your hips, I would recommend that you press pause and run and get a few blankets and sit up on the blankets so that your knees will be lower than your hips. Your lower back will like that. So let's begin. Now that we're in our stance, let's begin with some pelvic tilts. So you're gonna rock your pelvis back, and you can kind of feel maybe that you're sitting behind your sit bones, on your tailbone, or maybe even on your sacrum, on the back of your pelvis. And then do the opposite. So tilt your pelvis forward. So if you had your fingers here in your hip creases in this pelvis forward position, you would feel like your fingers are getting a little bit pinched. Then again, go back, tilting the pelvis back, and that is increasing the angle at the front of the hip, okay? So just go back and forth here. Pelvic tilts. Let's add our breath to the movement so that we can bring in a little bit of mindfulness. So we're going to inhale to tilt the pelvis forward. Exhale to tilt the pelvis back. Inhale to tilt the pelvis forward. Exhale back. And now let's bring the rest of the spine into the movement. So as you inhale and you tilt your pelvis forward, lift up through your chest and your rib cage, maybe look up. And then as you exhale and the tailbone tucks under, arch your back, really spread your shoulder blades away from one another, stretching through the upper back. Inhale, we're kind of lengthening through the front of the body. Exhale, lengthening through the back of the body. Bring your neck and head into the movement. As you exhale, maybe tucking your chin to your chest. Last one. And return back to center. Now, let's see if we can isolate the pelvis again. So we're not going to be moving the rest of the spine, just the pelvis, but we're going to see if we can drive that movement coming from our legs. So I'd like for you to press your feet down into the ground and track them forward. So if you have socks on and you're on a hardwood floor, your feet are probably going to slide forward. So this is something that's good to try when you're barefoot or you have some sort of traction. So you're going to push your feet down and reach your feet forward and see how that kind of naturally brings your pelvis into that rocked back, tucked under position. So now do the opposite. Your feet are still pressing straight down, but now you're going to drag your feet back towards your chair. So again, if you had socks and you were on a hardwood floor, your feet would slide back towards the chair. But we're going to keep our feet where they are and just isometrically drag. And as we do that, we can tilt the pelvis forward, okay? So this is the inhale. And then as you exhale, push your feet down and forward and let your pelvis tilt back. Inhale, feet down and back, and let your pelvis tilt forward. Three more. Last one. Okay, so come back to neutral, and I'm going to turn sideways to face you. So now we're going to tune into our breathing a little bit. So bring your hands to your side ribs, right on the side of your rib cage, and kind of lower down towards the bottom of your rib cage. That should be more comfortable for your arms as opposed to trying to get your hands higher up towards your armpits anyway. So just get a nice handle right down here at the sides and the bottom of the rib cage. And now just take a few breaths. And as you breathe, feel with your hands, notice with your mind what kind of movement, if any, you feel in your rib cage as you're breathing. Okay, so now when you breathe in, your rib cage should be expanding. So not only does it expand out side to side as you felt into your hands, but it also expands forward and backward, and each individual rib moves as well, hopefully, like a bucket handle. So it's not quite as big of a movement as a bucket handle, but it is a really small movement that happens to your individual ribs. So did you feel any of those movements in your rib cage when your hands were there? Now that you're aware of what is happening or what might be happening, let's pay attention again. Take a few breaths. I'm going to switch my chairs to face forward because I keep hitting the side of it. Okay, so noticing what movement you feel again. Your shoulders are soft, away from your ears. And now also let's check in with the overall position of your rib cage and your pelvis. So you can relax your hands. Remember, we tuned in the pelvic tilts to the ways that the pelvis can move. So you want to find neutral. That would be, halfway between totally rocked back and totally rocked forward. You really want to feel your sit bones firmly on your chair. And then tune into your ribs. So I'm going to turn sideways so that you can see. One thing that we tend to do, especially me, when I'm feeling like I've been hunched over my desk all day, I'll compensate by doing a little bit of a back bend, and that kind of makes my chest feel more open than it actually is. So notice if your rib cage is kind of flaring forward, and if so, join me in letting gravity just mellow your rib cage down. And so this is not an upper ab exercise. Your abs are not contracting to pull your ribs down. It's just a real gentle softening and really just letting gravity hold your body in that neutral position. So you have a neutral pelvis stacked under a neutral rib cage. Now bring your hands back to your side ribs again. And now let's really intentionally breathe. So trying to exaggerate those movements that we already talked about. So as you breathe in, actively try expanding your rib cage outward into your hands. And then on the exhale, this is going to be a really active exhale. I'd like for you to imagine that you're pulling your rib cage in towards your midline, away from your hands, okay? This is going to fire up those muscles in between the ribs, as well as some of the bigger muscles that attach to the rib cage. So here we go. We're going to inhale and feel the ribs expand, and then as you exhale, actively try pulling the rib cage in towards center, keeping your shoulders relaxed. So this is not the way that you need to breathe all the time, but it is a useful exercise for kind of waking up these muscles and getting acquainted with the way that our body moves. Okay, go ahead and relax your hands down to your legs. And now we're gonna turn sideways in our chair. So that I can still face you, I'm just gonna turn my chair sideways. Okay, so I'm sitting on the right side of my chair, and I'm going to rest my right arm on the chair back. You can also kind of reach down for the leg, wherever is most comfortable for your arm to be, go ahead and do that. Take your left arm, reach up towards the ceiling and lean over towards the back of your chair. Now, you can also, depending on your body and the size of your chair, you might be able to kind of rest your rib cage against the chair and have the chair back in your armpit, and then you can get a little bit more leverage to really drop your left hip down, maybe increasing the stretch on the side of the body. Now, come back to that over-exaggerated breath. Imagine that you have an extra set of arms and your hands are back on the side ribs. Great, one more breath. Okay, so come back upright. Noticing how you feel, maybe a little bit wonky, maybe feel one side's longer than the other. So I'm gonna turn my chair the other way, and you can just flip around to the other side. So now you're sitting off the left side of the chair. And again, you can have your left arm resting on the chair back, reaching down for the leg, or you can scoot to the back and rest your rib cage on the back of the chair as your left arm dangles or reaches towards the ground. So reach your right arm overhead. And especially if you're leaning your rib cage against the chair back, that gives you a little extra leverage to really reach your right hip down, increasing the length of the space between your hip and your armpit. So now, sprout your second set of arms and have them here, those imaginary second set of arms here on the outside of the rib cage again, and do that over-exaggerated breath. Okay, one more. Great, come back up, right? Now we're gonna get moving a little bit more. So turn the right way in your chair, the correct way. And again, you wanna sit so that your seat, your bottom is really close to the edge of the seat. You're sitting on the edge of your seat because you're so excited to see what I've got next for you. So we're gonna do some assisted squats with the chair. So I like to have my arms out in front to kind of counterbalance my weight. So you're gonna take a breath in to prepare, and then as you exhale, you're gonna stand up, squeezing your tush. Inhale to sit down, exhale to stand up, okay? So really make sure that your chair is not gonna move. If you have a chair with wheels that you have locked, but you might be nervous that it will still slide, back your chair up against the wall so that you know it will be there for you and it's not a trust fall as you lower your hips back down, because it is kind of a trust fall. Okay, so here we go. Take a breath in, exhale. Inhale to sit down, lowering with control. Exhale to stand up. So there's some things to pay attention to here. You can go at your own pace as well. How far forward do you have to lean to get up? Okay. The more you're leaning your torso forward, the less your glutes are gonna do. So try to keep your torso as upright as possible as you get up. And the same thing as you sit back down, which is a little bit harder for me, as you can see. Okay, I have to lean my torso further forward as I'm lowering down. Think about how you normally go to sit down in a chair. It's not a slow and controlled descent, is it? We usually just flop down. So we're challenging our muscles in a different way. And that's why it might feel challenging. It might feel difficult. And that's normal. You have to, instead of thinking to yourself, why can't I do this? I'm so weak. My body there's something wrong with me. Those are unhelpful thoughts. And instead, you can say something a little bit more self-compassionate, along the lines of, I don't do this movement very much. This is a new movement. I understand why it feels so hard. You can have a growth mindset about it instead of a fixed mindset. A growth mindset would say, this is just my first time trying this, and I'm gonna keep working at it, and I know that I'll improve with practice. A fixed mindset would say, how I'm doing this today is how I'm always going to do it. And that's just not the case. So now that you've been listening to me talk while you're doing these squats for a while, let's go ahead and stop, sit back down. Okay, and let's come back to those pelvic tilts where we're driving from the legs. So take a breath in, and as you exhale, push your feet down and forward to take your pelvis back, and then push your feet down and back. Inhale to take your pelvis forward. Great. Go ahead and come to your neutral pelvis. Now let's tune in to our feet a little bit. So this is a really easy thing that you can layer onto your workday that really doesn't take much effort and is so good for your feet. So you might choose to look at your feet while you do this exercise so that you have that feedback, or you're reinforcing that feedback. So first of all, just go ahead and lift all 10 toes away from the ground. Lift them away from the ground and spread them apart. Now, I know that some people, when they like to do this, they use their hands too. And that's fine. If you notice that your hands and fingers start doing the things that we're asking your feet to do, that's okay. Now go ahead and relax your toes to the ground. And again, lift your toes and spread them out, fan them out. These are your monkey toes. Get your monkey toes awake and alive. And then go ahead and put your feet down. Now see if you can just lift your big toes off the ground. Can you just lift your big toe and put it down? Just lift your big toe again. Lift your big toe up away from the ground as much as you can. And then again, put your big toe down. Now the other 4 toes, lift the other 4 toes up off the ground. Keep your big toe relaxed on the ground without scrunching it or clawing it into the ground. And go ahead and put the rest of the 4 toes back down. Same thing, rest of the 4 toes lift. The 4 little toes lift. Maybe take a look and see how it's going. Go ahead and relax those 4 toes to the ground. Now keep those 4 toes relaxed and long and strong on the ground. And again, just lift the big toe. And then big toe down, 4 little toes up. 4 little toes down, big toes up. And so you're gonna toggle back and forth. Again, you can look at your feet so you have some feedback. Now, as you are lifting one toe or one set of toes, make sure that the toes that are on the ground are, again, long and strong, not gripping or scrunching into the ground. Almost done. Okay, go ahead and stop. And now we're going to take a top of the foot stretch in the chair. So you're just going to take your left foot back and put the top of your foot on the ground. So you can just reach that foot back as far as feels comfortable. And if you want more stretch sensation, then push the top of the foot into the ground and drag it isometrically forward. Okay. And then let's go ahead and switch to the other side. Right foot back, top of the foot tucks under. And again, you can push the top of the foot straight down into the ground, and you can track it forward, drag it forward if you need a little extra oomph. Okay, great. Now we're gonna bring that right foot back up and let's turn sideways to the right. So you're gonna sit so that you have your left seat, your left buttock off the seat, off the chair, and you're gonna stretch your left leg back any amount. So you're coming into a supported lunge position. It's okay if your back knee is bent. It might be straight. If you notice that your back leg is straight, check in with your rib cage. If your rib cage is flared, go ahead and stop, bend your back knee so you're giving some slack, mellow your ribs. Okay, and notice how that changes the stretch sensation. Okay, maybe feeling something nice in the front of the left hip. If you want, you could take your left arm up and notice how that changes the stretch. Also, maybe leaning over towards your chair back, noticing if that changes the stretch, keeping the ribs mellow. Just normal breathing. Go ahead and come back up. Lower your arm, and you're going to take your back leg, your left leg, to meet your right leg. And now you're going to want to hold on to the chair with your hands. So maybe holding on to the back of the chair or the seat, whatever feels most stable for you. And then you're going to without falling out of the chair, you're going to let your left hip sink down towards the ground. And then as you exhale, wake up these side waist muscles here on the left side and scrunch your hip back up. So inhale, I'm going to put my finger here on my left waist so I can feel. And then as I exhale, I'm going to scrunch my hip back up. Okay, so there is a muscle in the back that's helping this hip to depress and lift, but we can also recruit these side waist muscles as well. So inhale to get long here, and then exhale to level. Keep your ribs mellow. You might even feel some movement or some activity on the right waist as well. One more. Great. Okay, go ahead and swoop around to the left now. So sitting with the right buttock off the chair, you're gonna sweep your right leg back into a lunge. Okay, now check in with your rib cage. So if your rib cage is flared up, that's fine, but let's just give ourselves a little slack so that we can really concentrate the load or the stretch energy right here at the front of the hip and the front of the thigh. So bend your back knee, and that's gonna give you some slack to drop your ribs, mellowing the ribs. Again, this is not an upper ab activity. And then you might keep your back leg bent. If when you straighten it, it does make your ribs flare up, then keep the leg bent and feel that stretch sensation on the front of the hip, the front of the thigh. Maybe lift the right arm up. Maybe lean over to the left. Enjoy your breath. You don't have to do that over-exaggerated breathing at this point. Okay, and go ahead and come back upright. Lower your arm and sweep your right foot back up to meet your left. Okay, so again, hold on to your chair in some way to make sure that you're not gonna fall off your chair as you let, oh, I'm gonna fall off my chair. As you let your right hip release down towards the ground. Okay, so we've increased the space between the ribs and the pelvis on the right side. And then we're gonna take a breath in, and as we exhale, we're gonna level the hips back out. So if you imagine that you have one of those bubble levels, when we come to that exhale position, the level should be right there in the middle at your belly button, okay? So let's inhale and let your right hip release down towards the ground. And exhale, come to level. Continue at your own pace. Mellow ribs. Three, 2, and 1. Great job. Okay, so from here, we're gonna stay facing that same direction, the left, but I'm gonna just turn my chair so that I'll still be able to face you. So sitting off the left side of your chair, again, sitting closer to the edge of the seat, you're going to let your ribs drop, stay mellow there, and then go ahead and bring your hands together. Maybe put them on your shoulders or on the center of your chest, or you bring your hands together and interlace, whatever feels comfortable for you. You're just gonna rotate your torso back and forth. And we're getting the arms out of the way so that we can really see how much our torso and our spine can rotate independent of the forces that our arms can contribute, like pulling with the arms or momentum or things like that. So this is kind of just a little swivelly twist from side to side. So go to the left and see how far you can go to the left, okay? And then go to the right and see how far you can go to the right. It's probably different, okay? That's normal. And then just continue your swivel again, side to side. Keeping your ribs mellow. Okay, now we are going to allow ourselves to use our arms, but the arms are just going to be there to hold us in the position that our trunk gets us into, okay? So take a deep breath in. As you exhale, twist to the left, so you're twisting towards your chair back. Okay, so now feel where you stopped and go ahead and reach for your chair back. Hold your elbows out wide, side to side, and your hands are really light here, okay? So you should be able to take your hands up and not untwist at all. Now, sprout your second set of arms, and remember when we had our hands on the side ribs, what that feeling of breathing, that intentional exaggerated breath was like? Let's do that here in our twist. So you're gonna inhale and feel the rib cage expand, and then as you exhale, you're actively engaging and squeezing the rib cage in towards your midline. Now you might feel, as you exhale and engage the ribs in, you might feel like your rotation deepens. You might not. Just pay attention. Still not pulling with the arms. One last breath. Great. Untwist. Bring your hands back to your previous position. So your hands are out of the way, and swivel twist again. Notice if there's any change. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and turn the other way. So we're off the right side of the chair. And again, I'm just going to flip my chair so that I can stay facing you. Okay, so bring your hands back into their like neutral position where they're out of the way. Mellow your rib cage again. And let's take a breath in. As you exhale, rotate to the right, twist to the right, towards your chair back. Okay, and then after you can't twist anymore, using your trunk muscles, release your hands to the chair back, elbows out wide, side to side, and then you're sprouting, regrowing your second pair of arms, coming back to that breath that we have talked about. So when you inhale, feeling the ribs expand, and then as you exhale, really actively squeezing the ribs in towards the midline. So again, if you lifted up your hands, you wouldn't untwist. Last breath here. Great, go ahead and release, untwist. Okay, now bring your hands back to their out of the way position. Come back to your swivel twist and check in for changes. I don't know about you, but I just feel like things are a little bit freer, that the twist happens a little easier, that I can rotate slightly farther on each side. So now we're going to go ahead and release the hands. We're going to turn to face the front of the chair the normal way again. Okay, so now we're going to sit again away from the seat back. You don't have to sit all the way on the edge of your seat though. You just want your back to be holding you up and not the chair back. So now we're going to bring the left foot up and cross it over the right thigh. And we're gonna, so make sure you don't have socks on. We're gonna interlace our fingers in between our toes. So remember that the tips of your fingers are probably skinnier than the parts of your fingers that are back towards your knuckles. So maybe start with the tips of your fingers, and then if that feels well, you can kind of slither your fingers a little bit further in. Okay, oh, I missed one. I thought that felt funny. You might have to use your fingers to help, your other hand to help get your fingers in between your toes, and that's fine. So, might be a big stretch. If it's feeling well and you want to add a little bit, you can give a little squeeze with your right hand. Okay, like you're wringing out a sponge. And then if this works for you to have your foot and ankle hanging off the right thigh, you can use your hand to steer your ankle into circles, to steer your foot into ankle circles. Okay. Oh, that just feels so good to me. I hope it feels good to you. Go in the other direction. Okay. Now you can go ahead and extend extract your fingers from your toes. And we're gonna stay in this figure 4 position, making sure that you're in a neutral pelvis, mellow ribs. And if you feel a good stretch in the outside of your left hip, then you can stay more upright. But if you wanna explore a deeper stretch sensation, keep your pelvis in neutral and just lean forward over your leg any amount. Take some nice soothing breaths, softening your shoulders. And come back upright, and let's do the other side. So uncross, both feet on the ground, take a full breath in and out. Okay, so get your right foot up. Okay, and interlace your left fingers in between your right foot toes. Okay, again, remembering that usually our fingers are tapered and that the width is usually greater up towards the knuckle and narrower down towards the fingernail. So if you haven't ever done this before and your feet feel tight, just try to get the tips of your fingers in between your toes. If you feel like your feet are welcoming some more space, then you can start to wiggle your fingers a little further in there. Okay, so if it feels well, go ahead and give your foot a little squeeze, a little hug from your hand. And then if you can get your right foot and ankle hanging off of your left thigh, you can go ahead and circle the ankle. Again, this just feels so good. And reverse. Okay, go ahead and come back to center. Extract your fingers from your toes. Find your neutral pelvis and your mellow ribs. Keep your pelvis in neutral, and if you want to, you can lean forward over your front leg any amount, watching that stretch sensation in the right hip. Enjoying some deep breaths here. And go ahead and come back upright and release your right foot down to the ground. Now for our last bit here, you have some options. If you are close by your desk or a table that matches the height of your chair, you can always scooch your bottom back deeper into your chair and lean your torso forward so that your forehead rests on your table. Now, if it feels too hard, you can always put a towel or a blanket down, but you can put your head on the table. If you're not nearby a table, you can make fists and rest your elbows on your knees and your forehead on your fists. So maybe not quite as passive, but still really good. This pressure on the forehead is just like so calming for your brain. So we're gonna take advantage of that. So get into your position where your head is supported and you have that pressure on your forehead, really letting your head relax. And you can even rock your head or roll your head a little bit from side to side. Giving a little forehead massage. And then just rest in center. And we're gonna take 10 breaths. So you're gonna start at 10, and each exhale you count back another number. So first exhale is 9. Next exhale is 8. Each exhale is an opportunity to release tension, release stress. The closer you get to 0, the more calm and peaceful you begin to feel. And when you get to 0, take just a moment to enjoy that feeling of peace and restfulness. Now it's time to channel your sloth nature and take your dear sweet time coming back upright. Feel free to use your arm strength to help lift your head, lifting up on an exhale. If you were using your hands, release your hands. How do you feel? Thank you so much for joining me. Again, I hope that these practices in the chair were so helpful to you and that they feel easy to incorporate into your workday. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.